The greatest wedding gift my family ever asked of me was to disappear. Forever. For years, my wealthy Beverly Hills family treated me like their invisible servant, their personal chef hidden in a marble kitchen, while my Instagram-famous sister Madison basked under camera flashes, sipping champagne with celebrities. Every gala, every holiday, every carefully staged moment of perfection, they pushed me into the background, faceless, nameless, useful, but never valued. But last Thanksgiving, when my mother, Patricia, demanded I single-handedly prepare a 7-course feast for 30 influencers with less than 48 hours' notice, something inside me broke. That night didn't just fracture our family dynamic, it detonated it. And the shockwaves reached all the way to a tech billionaire worth $2.3 billion. Before I explain how I went from being the ghost daughter, no one acknowledged to the woman my mother begged for forgiveness in front of half of Beverly Hills. Pause for a moment. If you love stories where justice is plated ice cold, hit that subscribe button. Tell me in the comments your most unforgettable family drama. I read them all, and your voices fuel my own. Now let me pull back the curtain on that November evening when the failure daughter narrative collapsed. The truth was simple, yet devastating. While my family assumed I was a broke culinary school dropout mooching off their charity, I had quietly built an empire they couldn't even imagine. They were too busy worshiping Madison's 2.8 million followers to ask what I'd been doing with my time. What they discovered didn't just destroy their social standing, it gave me back my freedom. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the sharpest revenge is success itself, served where everyone who doubted you can see it. I was in my West Hollywood penthouse, carefully packing my Hermes luggage, when my phone exploded with that familiar ringtone, my mother's call. The caller ID flashed Patricia Richardson, and my stomach immediately clenched. I knew that tone before she even spoke. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my condo, I could see the Hollywood Hills twinkling, a view that cost me $8,000 a month. Money my family assumed I didn't have. Emma, cancel whatever little hobby project you're doing this weekend. Patricia's voice cut through the phone like broken crystal. No greeting, no warmth, just commands. Madison's hosting her influencer collective for Thanksgiving dinner. 30 people, including Alexander Stone. My blood turned to ice. Alexander Stone, the tech billionaire who'd built 3 companies and sold them for a combined $4.7 billion. The same Alexander Stone whose private equity firm, Stone Ventures, I was flying to Napa Valley to meet with tomorrow morning. These aren't just any people, Emma, she continued, her voice dripping with that familiar condescension. This is Madison's breakthrough moment. Alexander Stone specifically requested an authentic, home-cooked experience for his investment discussions. You know how these tech people are about keeping it real? I stared at my laptop screen where an email from Alexander's assistant glowed. Mr. Stone is excited to discuss the $5 million investment in Lux Catering Solutions. He's particularly impressed by your bootstrap success story and wants to hear how you built such an empire without family money. Without family money, if he only knew. The menu is already planned. Patricia steamrolled ahead. 7 courses, wine pairings, that molecular gastronomy nonsense you learned in cooking school. Use the good china, the Bernardod set. These people have seen everything, Emma. Don't embarrass us. Don't embarrass us. Like I was some charity case they kept around for entertainment. I need you here by 6 a.m. sharp tomorrow, she commanded. Madison's been promoting this dinner for weeks. Thanksgiving with Stone is already trending. 48 hours of prep time should be plenty for someone with your limited schedule. My limited schedule. I glanced at my calendar where back-to-back meetings with Fortune 500 companies filled every slot. 3 locations across California, 75 employees, and a client wait list that stretched 6 months. But to Patricia, I was still the family failure who'd dropped out of culinary school. What she didn't know was that I'd left culinary school to build something bigger. What she'd never bothered to ask was how I afforded this penthouse, the designer clothes, or the Range Rover in my private parking space. Emma, are you listening? Her voice sharpened. This isn't negotiable. Family comes first. Family comes first when they need a servant, I thought, staring at my first-class ticket to Napa Valley. I'll text you the detailed menu. And Emma? Her voice turned sweet with fake affection. Don't screw this up. Madison's entire future could depend on impressing Alexander Stone. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the most important business card in my wallet, the one that read, Emma Richardson, CEO, Lux Catering Solutions. Let me paint you the perfect picture of my family's twisted dynamic, because understanding the players is crucial to appreciating just how spectacular their downfall becomes. Patricia Richardson, my mother, is Beverly Hills royalty in her own mind. At 58, she spent 3 decades climbing the social ladder, armed with my late grandfather's real estate fortune and an obsession with appearances that borders on pathological. She sits on 4 charity boards, not out of kindness, but because it's where the real power brokers gather. Patricia measures success in Instagram mentions and invitations to exclusive galas. Her greatest fear? Social embarrassment? Her greatest blind spot? Believing money equals worth. Then there's Madison, my 27-year-old sister, the golden child who turned being pretty into a profession. With 2.8 million Instagram followers, she's built an empire on lifestyle content and sponsored posts. Madison isn't evil. She's just never had to develop empathy because everything has always been handed to her. She genuinely believes her social media success makes her more valuable than anyone else in the room. Her superpower is making people feel invisible while smiling sweetly. My father, Robert, died when I was 19, leaving behind a real estate portfolio worth $50 million and 2 daughters who handled grief very differently. While Madison turned to social media for validation, I disappeared into work. But here's what none of them realized. I'd inherited more than grief from my father. I'd inherited his business instincts, his work ethic, and his ability to spot opportunities others missed. While they were playing dress up with his money, I was building something real. The red flags were everywhere, but I'd been trained to ignore them. When Madison got a $100,000 car for her birthday, while I got a lecture about financial responsibility. When they remodeled Madison's bedroom suite while converting mine into storage. When they stopped asking about my life because failure wasn't interesting enough to discuss. I'd become the family ghost, present when needed, invisible when convenient. But ghosts, I'd learned, can be surprisingly powerful when they finally decide to haunt. The tears always come during this part of the story, so grab some tissues if you're the emotional type. Because understanding how I became the invisible daughter requires going back to when everything was still beautiful, before grief and greed turned my family into strangers. I was 17 when my father, Robert Richardson, had his first heart attack. Not fatal, just a warning, but it changed everything about our family dynamic. Before that moment, I was the daughter with potential, valedictorian, early acceptance to Stanford, a future that sparkled with possibility. Madison was 13 and adorable, the baby everyone doted on. But I was the one Dad called his little business partner. Every Sunday, we'd drive through his properties together. "Emma," he'd say, pointing to a struggling restaurant, "what do you see?" I'd analyze the location, the foot traffic, the competition. "Now, what would you do differently?" Those conversations shaped how I saw opportunity, not as luck, but as vision meeting preparation. When Dad survived that first heart attack, something shifted in my mother. Patricia, who'd always been status conscious, became obsessed with appearances. "People are watching us," she'd whispered during his recovery. "We can't look weak." She started throwing elaborate dinner parties to show everyone that the Richardson family was stronger than ever. And guess who became her secret weapon in the kitchen? "Emma's so gifted with food," Patricia would tell guests, beaming with pride as I emerged from the kitchen with another perfect course. "She has such a natural talent." Back then, her praise felt like love. I didn't realize I was being groomed to be useful rather than valued. The second heart attack came during my senior year at Stanford. This time, there was no recovery. Dad died on a Tuesday morning in March, and with him went my identity as the daughter with a future. Madison, now 17 and devastatingly beautiful, became Patricia's project. "She has the look for social media," my mother announced at the funeral reception, already planning Madison's Instagram career while Dad's coffin was still being lowered. I dropped out of Stanford to come home and help with the estate. Just temporarily, I told myself, just until everything settles. But grief has a way of making temporary feel permanent. While I handled Dad's business affairs and kept our family functioning, Madison was sent to modeling classes and media training. The transformation was gradual, but devastating. Family dinners where I'd once shared my business ideas became Madison's social media strategy sessions. "Emma, could you handle the cooking?" became, "Emma, you're so much better at this than we are." Then simply, "Emma's handling dinner," as if I'd always been the help rather than the daughter. The most heartbreaking part wasn't the cooking or the cleaning, or even the constant comparison to Madison's growing success. It was the way they rewrote our family history. "Madison's always been our social one," Patricia would tell friends, as if I'd never existed beyond the kitchen. "Emma's more behind the scenes." Behind the scenes. That phrase haunted me for years. But here's what Patricia never understood. While she was busy polishing Madison's image, I was absorbing everything Dad had taught me about business. Every property management decision I handled, every vendor negotiation, every financial analysis was building muscles they didn't even know I had. When I finally left for culinary school at 23, it wasn't because I loved cooking. It was because I was suffocating in their narrative of who I was supposed to be. "At least you'll have a skill," Patricia said when I announced my plans. Not, "We're proud of you," or "Follow your dreams," but relief that I'd found a way to be useful. What she didn't know was that culinary school was never the destination. It was just the first step in a plan I'd been forming since Dad's funeral. a plan to build something so undeniably successful that they'd never be able to make me invisible again. But first, I had to disappear completely. The real turning point came 3 years ago, though my family was too blind to see it. I'd been running Lux Catering Solutions for 2 years, growing slowly but steadily, when I made a decision that would change everything. I stopped trying to include them in my success. It started with small things. When Patricia asked what I did all day, I'd shrug and say, catering stuff. When Madison posted about some influencer event she attended, I'd like the post without mentioning that my company had probably catered it. I became a master of deflection, letting them maintain their comfortable fiction that I was barely scraping by. The suspicion should have started when I moved to West Hollywood. Patricia's reaction to my new address was predictably dismissive. "Well, it's not Beverly Hills, but at least you're trying to better yourself." She assumed I was sharing the space with roommates, maybe renting a tiny studio. She never asked to visit, never wondered how I afforded the upgrade from my previous apartment. Madison's response was even more telling. "West Hollywood is so trendy right now," she'd posted on her Instagram story with a picture of the neighborhood. "My sister Emma just moved there." Sibling love, supporting family. The comments were full of her followers asking about me, but she never tagged me, never mentioned what I did for work. I was a prop in her content, not a person. The second red flag they missed was my car. I'd upgraded from a beat-up Honda to a Range Rover, and Patricia's only comment was, "I hope you're not getting into debt trying to keep up with Madison's lifestyle." The assumption that I couldn't afford nice things was so ingrained that she literally couldn't see evidence to the contrary. But the biggest warning sign came last Christmas when I'd politely declined to cook their annual holiday party. "I have a work commitment," I'd explained. Patricia had laughed, actually laughed, and said, "What work commitment could you possibly have on Christmas Eve? Catering some sad little office party?" That sad little office party was actually a $500,000 event for a tech company's leadership retreat. But explaining would have required them to listen, and they'd lost that ability years ago. The cognitive dissonance became almost comical. I'd show up to family gatherings in designer clothes, carrying luxury handbags, and they'd treat it like some kind of cute costume. "Emma's trying to look professional," Madison would giggle to her friends. "It's so sweet how she dresses up for her little catering jobs." Her little catering jobs. Last month alone, those little jobs had generated $800,000 in revenue. The tension reached a breaking point 6 months ago during Madison's birthday celebration. She'd planned an elaborate rooftop party in Malibu for 150 of her closest friends and followers. Naturally, I was expected to handle all the food. "It'll be great content for your portfolio," Patricia had said, as if I was still building a portfolio instead of running an established business. But when I arrived at the venue, I discovered something that made my blood boil. Madison had hired a celebrity chef to make a grand entrance and take credit for all the food I'd prepared. Some wannabe influencer chef with 500K followers who specialized in elevated comfort food. Basically, the exact menu I'd been perfecting for years. I watched from the kitchen as this fraud posed with my food, taking selfies with my dishes, while Madison introduced him as the incredible chef who made tonight possible. Meanwhile, I was invisible, just another member of the service staff. That night, lying in my penthouse bed, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being their secret weapon, done being the family ghost. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then I'd give them exactly what they wanted: complete invisibility. I stopped attending family dinners unless specifically required, stopped volunteering information about my life. When they asked what I was up to, I'd smile and say, "Keeping busy," before changing the subject to Madison's latest sponsorship deal or Patricia's charity work. The beautiful irony was that the less available I became, the more they needed me. Suddenly, every family gathering required my special touch in the kitchen. Every social event needed my expertise with the menu. They'd created a monster of dependency without realizing it, but they still saw me as the failure. Still introduced me as their daughter who helps out with catering sometimes. Still assumed my success was a cute hobby rather than a business empire. The final straw came last month when Madison asked me to cater her engagement party to some tech bro she'd been dating for 6 weeks. "It needs to be Instagram-worthy," she'd explained, "but also sophisticated enough for his Silicon Valley friends. Think rustic luxury meets modern elegance." I'd quoted her my standard rate, $15,000 for 80 people. She'd nearly choked on her kombucha. "Emma, that's insane. It's just family. Can't you do it for like $500 for the exposure?" Exposure. As if her 2.8 million followers were going to revolutionize my business that was already booked solid for the next 8 months. That's when I realized they didn't just see me as unsuccessful. They saw me as desperate. Desperate enough to work for free. Desperate enough to be grateful for scraps. Desperate enough to never demand the respect I'd earned. They were about to learn just how wrong they were about who I'd become. But first, I had to let them dig their own graves a little deeper. The first crack in their perfect delusion came exactly 3 weeks before the Thanksgiving disaster. And it happened in the most unexpected way possible. Madison was filming content at some trendy Beverly Hills restaurant when she spotted me across the room having what looked like a casual dinner. What she didn't realize was that she was witnessing the closing of my biggest deal to date. I was sitting across from Jennifer Walsh, the event coordinator for tech mogul Alexander Stone's investment firm. We were finalizing details for a series of high-stakes dinners that would net my company $2.3 million over 6 months. But to Madison, who was filming her day-in-the-life content, I was just her unemployed sister, randomly eating at an expensive restaurant. "OMG, guys," she whispered to her phone. "My sister Emma is here, and she's like, dressed up and everything. This place is so expensive. I wonder if she's on a date. Good for her." The comments immediately started flooding in from her followers, asking about me, wanting to know my story. But here's where it gets interesting. One of her followers happened to be Jessica Chen, a food blogger with serious industry connections. Jessica recognized me from a feature in Hospitality Today magazine and commented, "Wait, isn't that Emma Richardson from Lux Catering? She catered my sister's wedding last year. Absolutely incredible." Madison read the comment out loud, laughing. "Lux Catering? You guys are so funny. Emma does some catering on the side, but it's nothing major. Just small events and stuff." She was so confident in her dismissal that she didn't even bother to Google my company name. If she had, she would have seen our website featuring testimonials from A-list celebrities, Fortune 500 companies, and luxury resorts. She would have seen photos of events with price tags that exceeded her annual income. She would have seen that small events and stuff included the Academy Awards after party, Tesla's product launch celebrations, and Google's executive retreats. But Madison lived in a bubble. where her reality was the only reality that mattered. The idea that I could be successful outside of her awareness was literally incomprehensible to her. The comments on that video became increasingly curious about me. Food industry professionals started chiming in, sharing their experiences with Lux Catering. One comment that particularly stood out was from Marcus Rodriguez, head chef at Nobu Malibu. Emma Richardson is a powerhouse in this industry. Her company is booked solid for the next year. Mad respect. Madison's response? She hearted a comment that said, "It's so sweet that your sister has found something she's passionate about, even if it's small scale." Small scale. A company grossing $8 million annually was small scale to someone whose idea of business success was selling teeth-whitening kits to teenagers. The real wake-up call should have come when Patricia saw the video later that evening. Instead of asking me about Jessica's comment or wondering why industry professionals were praising my work, she called to lecture me about putting on airs. "Emma, Madison showed me that video of you at Le Bernardin. That place costs $300 per person. I hope you're not going into debt trying to impress some man. You know we can't bail you out if you overextend yourself financially." Le Bernardin, where I was closing a deal that would pay for their house. Where Jennifer Walsh had specifically chosen the location because Alexander Stone only works with vendors who operate at this level. Where the conversation had centered around my company's expansion into corporate retreats for tech giants. But Patricia heard expensive restaurant and assumed irresponsibility. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. "Mom," I said carefully, "I can afford Le Bernardin." "Honey, I know you think you can, but catering a few small parties doesn't mean you should be spending money like you're running some major operation." Some major operation. I was literally texting with the mayor's office about catering the city's New Year's Eve gala while she lectured me about fiscal responsibility. That night, I made a decision that would seal their fate. I stopped correcting their assumptions entirely. If they wanted to believe I was financially struggling, let them. If they wanted to assume my business was small time, perfect. Their blindness was becoming my greatest weapon. Because here's what I'd learned about people like my family. They can only see what doesn't threaten their worldview. Patricia needed to be the successful one, Madison needed to be the accomplished daughter, and I needed to be the struggling sister who made them feel better about themselves. Well, they were about to discover that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who end up holding all the cards. And I was ready to play my hand. You won't believe what happened next. After Madison's video went semi-viral in the food industry circles, something started shifting. People began connecting dots that my family was too blind to see, and the investigation into my real life began from the most unexpected source, my own mother's social circle. It started when Patricia's friend Diane mentioned seeing my company's truck at the Hilton Beverly Hills. "Richardson Catering," she'd said casually over their weekly tennis match. "Any relation to your Emma?" Patricia had laughed it off. "Oh, Emma probably works for them part-time. She does bits and pieces here and there." But Diane, bless her curious heart, had taken a photo of the truck because she thought it was such a coincidence. That photo made its way through the Beverly Hills gossip network faster than you can say social media. Within 48 hours, it landed in a group chat that included Sandra Morrison, whose daughter's Sweet 16 I'd catered the previous year for $85,000. Sandra's message was simple. Isn't this Patricia's daughter who supposedly can't keep a job? The responses that followed were like dominoes falling. Wait, Emma Richardson? She catered our anniversary party, cost us $60K but worth every penny. Lux Catering is booked solid. We tried to hire them for our charity gala, but they're completely full until next summer. Hold on, Patricia's been telling everyone her daughter is unemployed? The Beverly Hills wives were now actively investigating my success, and Patricia had no idea she was about to be exposed by her own social circle. Meanwhile, Madison was dealing with her own revelation crisis. The food blogger comments on her video had sparked interest from her followers, and some enterprising fans had started digging into my background. Someone found my LinkedIn profile, which I'd kept professionally updated but never promoted to my family. The profile revealed everything. CEO of Lux Catering Solutions, 75 employees, 3 locations, featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 for food and drink, named Entrepreneur of the Year by the California Restaurant Association. It was all there, hidden in plain sight, but they'd never looked. A follower screenshot the profile and posted it in Madison's comments. Your unemployed sister is apparently running a multi-million-dollar company. This is wild. Madison's response was peak Madison. LOL, you guys will believe anything on the internet? LinkedIn is like resume fiction. Anyone can claim anything. But the internet doesn't forget, and soon, her followers were posting photos from events I'd catered. Red carpet premieres, celebrity weddings, corporate galas, all featuring the distinctive Lux Catering aesthetic that I'd spent years perfecting. One particularly damaging post came from Sophia Martinez, an influencer with 1.2 million followers who'd attended a Google executive dinner I'd catered. She posted a carousel of photos showing the elaborate 7-course meal with the caption, "Still dreaming about this incredible dinner catered by Lux Catering Solutions. Emma Richardson is a genius. This level of artistry is unmatched in LA." The post had 50,000 likes and hundreds of comments praising my work. Madison couldn't delete it, couldn't control the narrative, and couldn't explain why she'd been calling me unemployed when clear evidence suggested otherwise. But the real investigation was happening behind the scenes, triggered by one of my own employees. My event coordinator, Marcus, happened to be dating someone who worked at Beverly Hills Country Club, the same club where Patricia served on the membership committee. Marcus's boyfriend, David, started hearing whispers about the Richardson family drama. "Apparently there's this whole scandal brewing," he told Marcus over dinner. "Mrs. Richardson has been telling everyone her older daughter is a failure, but word is getting out that she's actually super successful." Marcus nearly choked on his wine. "Mrs. Richardson, as in Emma Richardson? Your boss, Emma?" The pieces clicked together, and suddenly Marcus understood why I'd been so secretive about my family. David became an inadvertent spy, reporting back on the growing scandal within Patricia's social circle. "The ladies are ruthless," David reported. "They're comparing notes about events they think Emma catered, cross-referencing dates and menus. Someone even called Lux Catering pretending to need a quote, and confirmed that Emma Richardson is definitely the CEO. The investigation reached its peak when Patricia's arch-nemesis, Vivian Blackwood, decided to throw a charitable luncheon specifically to test the waters. She called Lux Catering, requesting our premium package for 100 guests, knowing full well who owned the company. When my assistant quoted her $45,000 for the event, Vivian nearly fainted. "And this is definitely Emma Richardson's company?" she'd asked innocently. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Richardson built Lux Catering from the ground up. She's one of the most respected caterers in Los Angeles. Vivian hung up and immediately called 5 of her closest friends, all of whom were in Patricia's inner circle. Girls, she announced dramatically, we need to talk about Patricia Richardson's little problem. The Beverly Hills wives investigation had uncovered what my own family couldn't see. I wasn't just successful, I was phenomenally successful. More successful than any of their children. More successful than their husbands' businesses. More successful than they could have imagined. And Patricia was about to walk into the biggest social humiliation of her life, completely unprepared for the bomb that was about to explode in her perfectly manicured face. The irony was beautiful. The same social network that Patricia used to elevate herself was now gathering evidence of her greatest mistake, underestimating her own daughter. They say the truth will set you free, but first, it was going to absolutely destroy my family's carefully constructed facade. The moment of truth arrived faster than I expected, and it was more devastating than I could have imagined. I was in Napa Valley, sitting across from Alexander Stone himself in the private dining room of Auberge du Soleil, about to sign the most important contract of my career, when my phone started buzzing with messages that would change everything. Alexander Stone was exactly what I'd expected from a tech billionaire. Sharp, direct, and completely unimpressed by anything except results. I've reviewed your proposal for the corporate retreat series, he said, sliding a leather portfolio across the table. $5 million over 12 months for exclusive catering services to Stone Ventures and our portfolio companies. My hands stayed steady as I opened the contract, even though my heart was racing. This wasn't just money. This was validation. Proof that I'd built something worthy of the biggest players in the industry. I have to say, Alexander continued, your story is exactly what I look for in business partners. Building a successful company without family money or connections is rare in Los Angeles. Most people here succeed because of who they know, not what they can do. Without family money, without connections. If only he knew the half of it. Your background check was particularly interesting, he added casually. You've managed to stay completely under the radar in social circles despite your success. Very refreshing in a town where everyone is trying to be famous. That's when my phone exploded. Madison. Emma, call me now. Patricia. This is a disaster. How could you embarrass us like this? Unknown number. This is Victoria Chen from Forbes. We need to discuss your upcoming feature. But the message that made my blood run cold was from David, Marcus's boyfriend. Emergency. Patricia just found out about your company. She's at the country club having a complete meltdown. Vivian Blackwood brought printouts of your Forbes article and your LinkedIn. Patricia fainted. Like actually fainted. Security had to call an ambulance. I looked up at Alexander, who was watching me with amused curiosity. Important business call? He asked. Family drama, I replied honestly. They just discovered what I do for a living. Alexander's eyebrows shot up. They didn't know? They thought I was unemployed. The silence stretched between us for a long moment before Alexander started laughing. Not polite business laughter, but genuine, gut-deep amusement. Your own family thought you were unemployed while you're running one of the most successful catering companies in California? It's complicated. No, Alexander said, still chuckling. It's perfect. Do you know how many entitled kids I meet whose parents funded their entrepreneurial journeys? You actually did this alone. My phone rang. Patricia's contact photo filled the screen. The professionally shot portrait she'd had taken for her charity board announcements. I showed it to Alexander. Should I take this? Absolutely. This I have to hear. I answered on speaker. Hi, Mom. How could you do this to us? Patricia's voice was shrill, hysterical. Vivian Blackwood just humiliated me in front of the entire membership committee. She had printouts, Emma. Printouts. Printouts of what? Your Forbes article, your company website, photos of events you catered. She said you've been pretending to be poor while running a multi-million-dollar business. Alexander was trying not to laugh, covering his mouth with his hand. I never pretended to be poor, Mom. You assumed I was poor. You lied to us. I never lied. You never asked. Don't you dare turn this around on me. Vivian said you catered the Getty Museum Gala last year. The Getty Museum, Emma! That event was an Architectural Digest. Yes, it was a beautiful event. The article said the catering budget was $300,000. Alexander's eyes widened. He pulled up something on his phone, and I could see him Googling the Getty Museum Gala. His expression shifted from amusement to genuine respect. Mom, can we discuss this later? I'm in a business meeting. What business meeting? With who? I looked at Alexander, who nodded encouragingly. I'm about to sign a $5 million contract with Stone Ventures. The line went completely silent. Then, Stone Ventures? As in Alexander Stone? Yes. You're meeting with Alexander Stone? Right now? Alexander leaned toward the phone. Actually, I'm sitting right here, and I have to say, Mrs. Richardson, your daughter is extraordinary. We've been trying to book Lux Catering for 2 years. The sound Patricia made was inhuman, like all the air had been sucked from her lungs. Alexander Stone? She whispered. You know my daughter? I know her work. Emma's company catered our last 3 board retreats. Impeccable service, incredible food. She's one of the most professional vendors we work with. Another silence. Then Patricia found her voice. And it was completely different. Smooth, charming, the voice she used for important people. Mr. Stone, what a wonderful surprise. I'm Patricia Richardson, Emma's mother. We're so proud of her success. I nearly dropped the phone. Alexander's mouth fell open. Proud? I said. 30 minutes ago, you thought I was unemployed. Emma, don't be dramatic. We've always supported your catering business. You called it a hobby last week. Alexander gestured for the phone. Mrs. Richardson, I have to ask, are you the same Patricia Richardson who's hosting a Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow night? Your daughter Madison mentioned it on social media. She tagged our company because I'll be attending. The color drained from my face. Alexander Stone was going to be at my family's Thanksgiving dinner. The same dinner I was supposed to be cooking for. The same dinner I'd refused to cater because I was here, signing his contract. Yes, Patricia's voice brightened. You're coming to our home? How wonderful! Emma was just telling us about your meeting. She'll be so excited to cook for you personally. Alexander looked at me. You're cooking tomorrow? No, I said firmly. I'm not cooking tomorrow. I'm here, signing this contract, building my business. Emma! Patricia's voice turned sharp again. You can't be serious. Alexander Stone is coming to our house. Then you better find a caterer. We don't have time to find a caterer. The dinner is in 18 hours. Alexander was watching this family drama unfold with fascination. Finally, he spoke up. Mrs. Richardson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I requested a home-cooked meal because I wanted something authentic and personal. But if Emma's not available, perhaps we should reschedule." "No!" Patricia screamed. "Please don't reschedule. This is so important for Madison's career." "Then figure it out," I said calmly. "Like I've been figuring things out for years without your help." I hung up and looked at Alexander, who was staring at me with something approaching awe. "You just hung up on your mother while she was begging you not to ruin a dinner party for me." "Yes." "And you're choosing to honor our business commitment instead of running home to cook." "Yes." Alexander picked up his pen and signed the contract with a flourish. "Emma Richardson, you just became my favorite business partner. Anyone who puts professional integrity over family manipulation is someone I want to work with." He slid the signed contract across to me. "But I have to admit, I'm curious about tomorrow night. Your family is expecting me for dinner, and now they have no chef." "They'll figure something out," I said, signing my name with steady hands. "They always do when they actually have to." My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Mom just told me Alexander Stone knows about your company. Is this real? Are you actually successful? Why didn't you tell us?" I showed the message to Alexander, who read it and shook his head. "Your sister really had no idea?" "None of them did. They built an entire narrative around my failure and never questioned it." Alexander raised his champagne glass. "Well, here's to spectacular failures." May your family's dinner party tomorrow be as memorable as this moment. We toasted, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete and total validation. Not from my family, not from society, but from my own choices and their consequences. My phone rang again. This time it was Madison, and her voice was small, confused. "Emma, Mom said you own a company worth millions? She said Alexander Stone knows your work?" "It's true." "But why didn't you tell us?" "Madison, when was the last time any of you asked about my life without immediately changing the subject to your follower count or Mom's charity work?" Silence. "I tried to tell you," I continued gently. "For years I tried, but every time I mentioned my work, you'd dismiss it or redirect the conversation. It became easier to just let you believe what you wanted to believe." "Emma, if this is real, Mom is freaking out. She's calling every caterer in LA, but it's Thanksgiving Eve. No one's available." I looked at Alexander, who was listening to every word with fascination. "Madison, I'm sorry you're in this position, but I made a choice to put my business first. And I'm not changing my mind." "But Alexander Stone will be there." "Alexander Stone is sitting across from me right now, and he understands my decision." Alexander nodded and spoke loud enough for Madison to hear. "Your sister just signed the biggest contract of her career. She made the right choice." The call ended with Madison in tears, but for the first time in my life, they weren't my responsibility to fix. The aftermath of my family's Thanksgiving disaster became Beverly Hills legend within 48 hours, and justice was served colder than the leftover pizza they ended up ordering for Alexander Stone. Here's what happened while I was celebrating my $5 million contract in Napa Valley. Patricia, in full panic mode, had spent Thanksgiving Eve calling every catering company in Los Angeles. The responses were all variations of the same theme. "We're sorry, Mrs. Richardson, but Thanksgiving is our busiest day. We've been booked for months." Months! The same advance booking that my company required, the same professionalism that Patricia had dismissed as Emma's little hobby. By 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, with guests arriving at 6 p.m., Patricia was forced to make the call that would cement her humiliation. She phoned Whole Foods and ordered everything they had available: pre-made turkey, frozen sides, store-bought pies. The elegant, home-cooked dinner she'd promised Alexander Stone became a $347 grocery store pickup. But the real catastrophe wasn't the food, it was the guest list. Word of my success had spread through Beverly Hills faster than wildfire, and several of Patricia's invited guests were my former clients. They arrived expecting to see the unemployed daughter serving dinner, only to discover that the unemployed daughter was actually the CEO of the company they'd hired for their own events. Sandra Morrison, whose anniversary party I'd catered for $85,000, walked into my childhood home and immediately recognized the Whole Foods containers. "Patricia," she'd said with barely concealed glee, "didn't you say Emma was cooking tonight?" Patricia's response, according to Madison's frantic texts, was to claim I'd had a mental health emergency and couldn't fulfill my commitments. The lie lasted exactly 5 minutes, until Alexander Stone arrived and casually mentioned that I was in Napa Valley, signing a multi-million-dollar contract with his company. The room went silent. Then Sandra Morrison started laughing, the kind of laugh that cuts through pretense like a knife. "Patricia, are you telling us that you don't know your own daughter runs Lux Catering Solutions?" The jig was up. Patricia had to admit, in front of 30 people who'd all heard her dismiss me as a failure, that she'd been completely wrong about my life. Alexander Stone, according to witnesses, was gracious but clearly uncomfortable. He ate one plate of the Whole Foods turkey, complimented Patricia on her lovely home, and left after exactly 45 minutes. Madison's Instagram story that night was a masterpiece of damage control that only made things worse. She posted a photo of the store-bought spread with the caption, "Sometimes the best meals are simple, grateful for family time. Thanksgiving, traditions, grateful, family first." The comments were brutal. "Girl, is that Whole Foods turkey? Didn't you say your sister was cooking? What happened to the home-cooked meal? Wait, isn't your sister the one who owns that fancy catering company? Why didn't she cook?" Madison deleted the post within 2 hours, but screenshots had already circulated. The influencer who'd built her brand on lifestyle perfection had just posted evidence of her family's spectacular failure. But the real justice came in the form of social consequences that money couldn't fix. Patricia was quietly asked to step down from 2 charity boards after board members questioned her judgment and family management skills. The Beverly Hills Country Club buzzed with gossip about the woman who'd been so oblivious to her own daughter's success that she'd publicly humiliated herself. Sandra Morrison, who I learned later had always disliked Patricia's superiority complex, became the unofficial narrator of the story. She told everyone who would listen about Patricia's shocked face when Alexander Stone explained my business relationship with his company. "You should have seen her," Sandra would recount at every social gathering. Patricia Richardson, who spent years looking down on everyone, finding out her failure daughter is more successful than any of us. The country club's Thanksgiving story became so legendary that people started requesting details. What exactly had Patricia said about me? How long had she been lying about my employment status? Was it true that I'd refused to cook for a billionaire? Each retelling made Patricia look worse and me look better. The narrative she'd spent years crafting, successful mother with one accomplished daughter and one disappointment, had completely flipped. Now she was the mother who'd been so blind to her own daughter's achievements that she'd publicly embarrassed herself in front of Beverly Hills society. Alexander Stone, true to his word, became my biggest advocate in Silicon Valley circles. Within a week of our Thanksgiving disaster, I'd received calls from 3 other tech companies wanting to discuss catering contracts. Word spread that the CEO of Lux Catering was so professional that she'd chosen business commitments over family drama, even when it involved a billionaire client. My calendar filled up faster than I could process new inquiries. The story of the caterer who refused to cook for her own family's party because she was closing a bigger deal became Silicon Valley folklore. I represented everything these entrepreneurs valued: dedication, professionalism, and the courage to choose growth over comfort. Meanwhile, Madison's follower count actually decreased as the Thanksgiving story spread. Her brand was built on aspirational lifestyle content, but the revelation that her family's success was built on lies and the dismissal of actual achievement made her content feel hollow. Brands started quietly dropping sponsorship deals, not wanting to be associated with the family drama. The most satisfying moment came when I received a formal apology letter from Patricia, written on her personal stationery and hand-delivered by her driver. The letter acknowledged her misunderstanding of my career and requested a private meeting to discuss our family relationship moving forward. Private meeting. After years of public dismissal, she wanted privacy to rebuild what she'd destroyed in public. I wrote back on Lux Catering letterhead, "I'm available for family discussions during my office hours. Please have your assistant contact mine to schedule an appointment." Justice, I discovered, wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being seen for who I'd always been, while they faced the consequences of their willful blindness. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new Malibu office. Yes, I expanded again, reflecting on how dramatically life can change when you finally stop accepting less than you deserve. The view of the Pacific Ocean reminds me daily that storms pass, but the strength you build weathering them lasts forever. My relationship with my family has evolved into something I never thought possible: mutual respect built on clear boundaries. Patricia attended therapy, both individual and family sessions, where she had to confront the painful truth about her treatment of me. The therapist helped her understand that she'd unconsciously needed me to fail, so Madison's success would seem more impressive by comparison. "I made you small," she admitted during one of our supervised family sessions, "because I was afraid that if you succeeded, it would diminish Madison's achievements." The honesty was brutal but necessary. For the first time in my adult life, Patricia saw me as a person rather than a supporting character in Madison's story. Madison surprised me the most. The follower count drop forced her to reevaluate her entire brand, and she discovered something beautiful. Authenticity resonated more than perfection. She started sharing the real story of our family dynamic, including her role in my marginalization. Her posts about learning to celebrate others' success instead of competing became some of her most engaging content. I spent so many years thinking success was a limited resource, she told her followers in a vulnerable video that went viral for all the right reasons. I thought if my sister succeeded, there would be less success available for me. But watching Emma build her empire taught me that lifting others up actually elevates everyone. She's now my company's social media manager, a role she earned through a proper interview process, not family connections. Her understanding of visual storytelling combined with her genuine enthusiasm for my work has transformed Lux Catering's online presence. We're a team now, instead of competitors in a game I never wanted to play. The business consequences of that Thanksgiving disaster were astronomical, but in the best possible way. Alexander Stone's endorsement opened doors I hadn't even known existed. Tech companies, entertainment giants, luxury resorts, everyone wanted to work with the caterer who'd chosen professional integrity over family pressure. Lux Catering Solutions now employs 150 people across 5 locations. We've catered everything from Supreme Court Justice retirement parties to album launch celebrations for Grammy winners. Last month, we were featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine with the headline, "The $20 million Decision: How One CEO Chose Success Over Approval." But the real victory isn't the money or the recognition. It's the lesson I learned and now share with anyone who'll listen. Your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. For 15 years, I'd allowed my family's limitations to define my possibilities. I'd hidden my light under their bushel, convinced that keeping peace was more important than demanding respect. The Thanksgiving decision wasn't just about choosing a business meeting over cooking dinner. It was about choosing myself over their comfort. I think about all the women watching this story who are hiding their own success, dimming their own light, or accepting treatment that doesn't match their worth. Your family's inability to see your value doesn't diminish that value. Their discomfort with your growth doesn't make your growth wrong. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people who've made you small is to grow so large they have no choice but to see you clearly. Not with malice, not with cruelty, but with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you bring to the world. My advice? Stop waiting for permission to be successful. Stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant to contain your full potential. Stop cooking dinner for people who've forgotten you're more than just the help. Build something so undeniably impressive that they can't ignore it. Then, when they finally see you, you get to decide if they've earned a seat at your table. The most beautiful part of this story isn't that my family finally accepted my success. It's that their acceptance was no longer necessary for my happiness. I'd found my worth in my work, my respect in my results, and my family in the team I'd built. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? What would you have done in my situation? Drop a comment below and share your story. Your courage might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story inspired you to demand the respect you deserve, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to remember their worth. Until next time, remember, you're not obligated to stay small to make others comfortable. This is Emma Richardson, CEO of Lux Catering Solutions, reminding you to know your worth, demand your respect, and never, ever cook for free.